Good morning, everybody. This is Jillian from Fiberspace. I'm one of the instructors that teaches sweaters. Now, I'm not knitting the Seven Sisters KAL sweater because I missed out on the lovely yarn for being too slow. However, I'm going to be able to show you the sleeve pickup through the Playdate cardigan, which is a class I teach, and the pickup for this sleeve works exactly the same as the Seven Sisters KAL. So, as you can see, I have my little setup here. Knitting needles are ready. I'm going to do magic loop, although you can certainly use DPNs. And then I have markers here. I like to keep them clipped to the side of my notions bag to help me keep track of where they are. And then I always have some with me. So I am going to pull off 4 for use today in our pickup. And really, there's no exact amount that you need to do this pickup. It's whatever you find helpful. The sleeve that I'm doing, I need to pick up 50 stitches total, and it's 25 on each side. So I'm doing 4 to be able to divide the sleeve evenly and see my different benchmarks, so to speak. I always recommend that students use the number that makes sense to their brain. So if it's 6 or 8, whatever helps you keep track. So to show you the done sleeve, the finished sleeve here on this cardigan, it is picked up and knit straight down from the shoulder. And this is 1/2 here and 1/2 on the other side. And it's a little tiny baby cardigan, so this is going to fit like a year-old kid. But this other side you can see over here, this still needs to be picked up. So what I'm going to do is use the stitch markers to mark the halfway point here, the halfway point on the underarm cast on stitches, and then a 1/4 and a 1/4. And then after I pick up the first half, I'm going to make sure that the same amount of stitches are in each section when I pick up the second half. I'm going to raise this up so there's a little bit more room between the camera and my hands. Alright, I should make it easier for you guys to watch as I do this if it's not too close. So I'm going to find the halfway point. There's 6 stitches that I cast on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So right here is the halfway point there. For me, the seam on the top is the halfway point here. It was done with a 3 needle bind off, again, just like your knit along. And then I could count rows, or I can be approximate, because again, the goal is 25 stitches on each side, and it's not going to be row for row because there are more than 25 rows between my thumb and my thumb here. So another way to track it is to just kind of fold this in half, lining up those two. And yes, I realize this is not super precise, but sometimes a best estimate is good enough. If you want to be super precise, you can absolutely count those rows and get it exactly in the middle. I'm just worried about my sections being even. So even if this section down here is a little bit bigger than this section down here, I'll just make sure that it matches on the other side when I pick up those stitches. That's the most important part. And then last one in. My ball of yarn has rolled away while I've been talking to you, so I have to grab it. So there we go. All of my stitch markers are lined up. And I'm going to start in the center of the underarm, coming up the front of the sweater, coming around down the back, and then meeting again at the center of the underarm. With my trusty yarn. Now there's a couple of different ways to treat the stitches at the underarm. One of the things I wanted to show you on my finished sleeve is this gaping right here where you can see my finger. That's totally normal, and sometimes it can even be a little bit larger than that and have like a visible hole. That's part of the process of doing a pickup like this, and we can go in later with this end that I have here, and I can weave that in nice and tight so you won't see a hole from the right side when it's done. But during the picking up process, sometimes it's more visible, but that doesn't mean you did anything wrong or incorrect, and it doesn't mean that your sweater is ruined forever. finishing hides a multitude of sins, as I like to say. So don't panic if there's a little gaping between this cast on row and then your pickup over here. So I'm going to go, so for the underarm, notice that because it's a cast on stitch, we have 2 bars. We can either go into 1 bar or 2 bars. I like to go into 2 bars to have a firm underarm seam, but that is a preference and it's not required. The other thing that I recommend people do is when you pick up, you can tip the needle and see how tight it is on the underside, and if it's looser than you'd like if I was in 1 bar, sometimes it can look a little loose, then maybe I would suggest picking up both bars. But it's a preference thing, not a requirement thing. Where'd my end go? There we go. So once I am in under, and again, this is my preference to do under both bars, I'm going to loop that yarn, leaving a 4 to 6 inch tail, and pull it through as if I've knit it. And that is 1. And then I'm going to loop the second one, and now dropping the tail, I'm going to pull in the next one, 2, and then the last one here is right here. And that is 3 of the 25 that I have to pick up on this side. Now, if you have a really wide gap right here where my finger is poking, you can sometimes pick up an extra stitch here and close that gap. I only recommend doing it if it's very, very large. Otherwise, a tail weaving at the end will be probably sufficient to hide that gap. Much like a thumb gusset in a mitten. So now I want to make sure as I go up this edge that I'm only picking up that first row of stitches. So I'm going to use my index finger to keep this nice and flat. I also really recommend a flat table and a bright light to do this. So when you're picking up a straight row, if it's not the exact count, like this is probably like 35 rows and I have to pick up 20 something stitches, 22 stitches, because I already picked up 3, I'm going to pick up 2 and skip 1. And sometimes it's pick up 3 and skip 1. It's an approximate, and it's about how it looks and how you like it looking. And also whether you need a even or odd number of stitches. For the Seven Sisters knit along, I'm going to guess you need an even number of stitches because there's ribbing, although I don't have the pattern in front of me, and it might even tell you the exact amount. So use those indicators from the pattern to help you figure it out. And this is the other reason to divide your pickup into sections. If you get to this first marker and you realize, oh, if I have 4 odd numbers, I'm not going to end up with the right amount, or if I have an odd number here and an even number here, it's going to work out. Basically, you can solve it early and back up here and pick up the extra stitches or pick up more or fewer here before you move on to do the rest of this armhole and have to then backtrack at the end after you've picked it all up. I like having that safety net. So again, I picked up 2, and now I'm going to skip this 3rd hole and pick up here. And then I'm going to pick up the next one in line. This is actually very hard to do while watching myself on camera, so you'll have a much easier time of doing it when you're not, like me, doing it through the lens of a camera. So then I'm going to skip 1 and go to the next one. Oop, slipped off. And it's okay if it slips off. I like to use the fabric almost like my second knitting needle to just... And if I have to, because this fabric's elastic, I lift it up and over the tip of the needle to leave and then pull this thread tight so that it doesn't go anywhere on me. Now, if you're finding that tricky, you can also use a tiny crochet hook to pull it through. And I've even, on particularly tricky yarns, brought my other knitting needle around and helped myself in there, right? And stuck this one in the next hole, stuck this one in if to knit, and then pulled it through that way. There's lots of different ways you can help yourself out if you find this step tricky. It's really more about patience. I find if you just take it 1 stitch at a time, it goes a lot faster than you think it's going to. Anyway, that's all there is to it. When you get all the way around to the other side and you meet in the middle, you start knitting your sleeve in the round, just like you would anything else. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing all of your finished products.